Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Okay, so in this image, okay, let me just look at this. Well, okay, so it's a painting.
Yes.
You've signed it. It looks like, for species, I'd say it's probably a leopard of some sort. Not a leopard cat from Hong Kong, but probably a larger leopard from like a proper large leopard.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of its head is kind of behind what looks like a tree of some sort. What's interesting is that the most well-defined area of this, so it's a portrait of a leopard. So all you see is the head and the neck, and there's no background. It's just the paper color, which is cream, is the background. And the execution-wise, what I would say has the most dramatic, impactful execution are the eyes.
The eyes.
Because that seems to be maybe where you put more attention, or that's definitely where, like compositionally, that's where a viewer looks. And the leopard is looking straight on at the viewer. And it's super high contrast in terms of the colors, in terms of the presentation. So I have to, so why this?
Well, you actually completely nailed it.
Okay, I'm going to say, you totally missed the whole point. Okay,
no, you nailed it, because it looks like he has his gaze focused on his prey.
Right.
So he has a single focus, where you can see from that expression that he's going after something, right?
The viewer.
Okay. Right. In this case, the viewer, I saw this in a photograph and I just fell in love with his eyes. So I do love painting because it's my form of flow, the state of flow, which is the state that gets you into a zone.
Csikszentmihalyi.
Well done. You studied, what gives people happiness.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is, apart from this and yoga, is what gives me a deep sense of flow. In fact, spiritual flow. Again, it's connection with an animal and nature.
Yeah.
And all yoga postures are actually postures that you will observe animals do. And also, I've been commissioned to do some works which I want to then use the proceeds from the sale of my works and put it back into the welfare of animals.
Okay.
So that gives me purposefulness.
Nice.
Apart from, the passion that I have, which is to paint. I haven't really decided what is me in terms of painting, but I know that they're bold colors.
Right. Well, that's definitely, like I said, high contrast. It looks almost like Conte stick, or it looks like more like a, not pastel, but is it paint, or is it?
It's done with pencils.
Pencils, right, yeah. Right. And the high contrast, the high key is so in choosing this as being the subject of what you wanted to illustrate or draw or create, your mind was clearly arrested by the gaze, right?
Yes.
Okay. So how does giving somebody else or empowering somebody else with a language to process their own trauma, grief, lives, experience, how is that reflected in your, I don't want to say your art very broadly, but in this particular piece?
Okay, in this particular piece, the eyes reminds me of a verse in the Patanjali Sutras. The Patanjali was the sage who brought yoga to the world, right? So he wrote a beautiful treatise on yoga, and one of them was the formula for success. His eyes reminded me of that formula.
Okay.
Which is ekagra. Eka means one. Ekagra, single focus view, right? Nairantarya in Sanskrit means unending, never giving up. Abhyasa, which means practice. So ekagra, nairantarya. Abhyasaha, Ishwar Pranidhana. Ishwar is the divine. Pranidhana is surrendering one's goal to the higher purpose.
Okay.
One achieves success, being single-focused, perseverant, never giving up, and repurposing our goals to the higher purpose, one achieves success in life. I like the fact that his gaze is, he probably doesn't see anything around him except that one goal or object that he wants.
Because he's hungry.
He's hungry.
That's his, yeah. So hunger. How does hunger feed? Puns are always intended. Okay, so how do you process or come to terms with hunger, which is biological? It's like a kind of, I've done some exercise, and food is fuel. Because you can't always be conscious and mindful about the food you eat. Of course, when you have that space around you to be calm and quiet, and enjoy the meal. But isn't being mindful all the time impractical, exhausting, naive?
Yeah, it is exhausting because our brain, we have not, over so many years, we have practiced doing things mechanically. We've got to get to work on time. We've got to quickly get a cup of coffee, grab something on the way, and we come back. And because our brain is so fascinating, it has an innate capacity to wire, rewire, learn, and unlearn. And we are a product of habituation. So it is tiring to live life at a more conscious awareness level, right?
Sure.
Therefore, yes, which is actually why our growth cannot happen without the distress and the discomforts, because we are so used to doing things and thinking in a particular way, a pattern of behavior, which causes us a lot of suffering, right? So learning takes time, unlearning takes time, and learning new ways takes time. So obviously it's got to be tedious. And therefore the path of growth, the path of evolvement, making conscious choices and awareness doesn't come without its challenges and difficulties. But then, is there anything in life that was ever worth gaining without the pain?
Okay.
Right? So yes, it's so much easier to say, I'm just going to eat whatever comes my way. I'm just going to live life however it is. FOMO, the fear of missing out. I'm going to try everything. It's so easy to think on an individualistic level and not think of the collective karmic consequences of our actions. Right.
Yeah. You asked me earlier before I started recording what I do in terms of my work. So part of it is this idea of service network leadership or service leadership. So a house, a family, an office, a clinic, these are all networks. Parents and their children form a kind of network. And that network has a health. And so what we say is that when we want to reach the highest level of service leadership, one of the best ways of doing that is to give, and we say there's a spiritual dimension, and it's not about theistic. So for example, I'm an atheist, but it's more about giving to something that's bigger than yourself.
Right.
Okay.
That's the higher purpose of the wholesome goodness we talked about, isn't it?
Sure. Okay, so you've been very kind to welcome me into your home for this lovely hour. How can we wrap this up into this perfect package that somebody who's listening is going to look more into what you're doing? Be it EMDR, be it painting, be it vegetarianism? So how would you like to articulate this for somebody to kind of turn this episode off and then go somewhere and do something? So move it to action. So what would that be?
To move it to action would be to set the intention when you wake up every day. It's to set the intention on waking every day that I will live my life today with compassion.
Okay.
And then everything else will fall in place. The choices you make, the answers you give, the questions that you are facing, the things that you need to do to get through the day. If you set the intention to meet your day with compassion for yourself and for others.
Okay. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you. This has been great. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else? So in terms of the academic underpinnings of your work, and then therefore the connections that you're making in terms of trauma, how do you feel within the Hong Kong context, going from India to Singapore, Hong Kong, how do you make sense of those three in terms of now, as we're pulling out of the pandemic, like what have you seen at on the practice level in terms of your clients?
Well, I know that what I've seen is the different cultures inform a person's way of thinking, choices, behaviors very deeply. And sadly enough, whatever you're seeing happening in the world today or historically, we're getting more and more sophisticated in the weapons that we use. On the one hand, you see incredible humanity, examples every day, whether it's Ukraine. The center of it all is if there were compassion to see everything as one and interlaced. We see borders, but we don't see one planet. We see different cultures, which says that, my culture deems that this is appropriate, that is not appropriate. If we were only able to see beyond it, way above beyond it, from a much, what would you call it, a 360-degree view.
Okay.
And when I take that approach with my clients, of course, I have to be very sensitive to their culture. Because culture can enrich us, it can also limit us.
Sure.
The ability to see where it helps us grow and where it limits us, I think is the thrust of the work that I do in these different countries. The suffering is universal. Suffering is inevitable. Being miserable is optional. And the difference between suffering and misery has to do with all the filters that we, view the world with.
Here's a question for you. You meet this delightful, touching being called Mary, who's suffering, who's miserable. How did you help her?
So the one thing that I have started doing in the last, I think, 8 or 9 years, is that I have a couple of NGOs that I believe conduct their work with integrity, where the money goes to the cause.
Yeah.
I regularly donate. And I donate, I would say, a fair amount. And it doesn't, not that I am rich or anything.
Yeah.
But the sense that, well, I'll have to show you from my mobile. So I had this horse that was blind, delivered a baby. And this horse was, pregnant and being made to pull carts in the sun.
Wow.
So I approached the NGO and said, buy her off the owner. Bring her in. She had glaucoma. She could see the baby that she gave birth. A lot of money behind neutering, spaying the animals. With Mary, the lady who agreed to take her in had said that when she would finally be up for sale, because her current owner was not willing to give up on her, she would still bear a few falls, right?
Yeah, got it.
That she would then, when she's no more useful to that market, she would have her. And I told her that when that time comes, let me know. Because then I would be happy to pay for her to buy that horse.
Aren't you amazing?
Right? I think it's the only thing that anyone would have done. And you too. The other thing that I did was I made a pact that I would talk about her so that, if a child wanted to go to the zoo, I don't know whether I will have grandchildren, whether my children plan to have theirs, they're married. But I know what I would bring to them as a grandmother.
Right.
I would teach them that if you want to see dolphins, go to the oceans.
Right.
If you want to see horses, just go to, places where you would see them.
Right.
If you want to see camels, go to the deserts.
Right.
Go to their habitat. Let them be free. Enlightening them about, I remember when I was a little girl and all my friends used to go to school that was very so-called elite, and they would buy all Prada, Chanel. Until I came across a documentary to see what goes into the making of the leather. So, to answer your question, what would I do? I would use my knowledge to share it with others. Hopefully then they would feel empowered, or even a sense of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Compassion?
No, not
Empathy.
compassion. Not even compassion. To explore.
Right. Curiosity.
Curiosity.
There we go.
There we go. Curiosity of really, where do these things come from? How do I connect with its history?
Yeah.
When you just eat an almond, that almond has gone through a journey where somebody has planted a seed. It became a tree. Somebody picked it. somebody else nurtured it, watered it, the earth caressed it. Do we have those deeper connections?
Or understanding, for sure.
Understanding. For sure. I think it's all about those deeper connections and understanding. That's what compassion is about. So all my trauma patients had the people who had, been part of that, the pain that they went through. If they had some connection with them, probably wouldn't do it. It's because we're disconnected.
Of course.
Right?
Woo! It's a lot. Thank you. I'm moving away from Hong Kong. This is my last face-to-face podcast in Hong Kong for a while.
Is it?
Yes, I'm leaving Tuesday.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But we met. Here we are. The universe put us together.
Where are you off to?
Canada.
Canada.
Yes.
It's a beautiful place.
It is a very beautiful
place. Where in Canada?
Anywhere. I'm starting off in Toronto and I don't know where I'll end up. So
I wish I could travel. We have another 2 years left here because of my husband's work. And then, boy, am I dying to go to the Himalayas.
Sure. I don't want to say your name incorrectly. So
Nivedita.
Nivedita. Sorry. Nivedita. Okay, so thank you so much, Nivedita. Thank you so much. It's so great. So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.